Night settles differently when you're alone. It presses in gently, like a hand on the shoulder, reminding you of everything you didn't say today, everyone who didn't think to call. You stand in the half dark of your room, the city's glow slipping through the blinds in soft, trembling lines. The hum of the refrigerator becomes a kind of heartbeat. The air feels too still, too large, as if the walls themselves are waiting for something you can't name. You check your phone again, not because you expect anything, but because the silence feels heavier when you don't. A blank screen, no new messages, just your reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, that slight tightness in your chest you've tried to ignore. You set it down, only to pick it up again a few minutes later. A small ritual of hope and disappointment repeated in whispered cycles. You look out the window, people move along the sidewalks below, couples laughing, friends spilling out of late-night cafes, someone holding someone else's arm like it's the most natural thing in the world. You watch them the way one watches a distant fire warm, inviting, yet impossibly far from where you stand. There's an ache in moments like this, an ache that doesn't shout but lingers quietly beneath the ribs. A heaviness you rarely admit out loud. The sense that everyone else has found some secret rhythm you can't seem to hear, as if the whole world is a conversation happening in the next room, muffled by a wall you can't pass through. You sit on the edge of your bed. The room feels bigger now, emptier. You hear the faint buzz of a streetlight outside, a dog barking somewhere down the block, on the whisper of your own breath. These tiny sounds become companions you didn't ask for, but accept anyway. Maybe you scroll for a while. Images of people smiling, clinking glasses, sharing inside jokes you're not part of. You linger on them longer than you should, not out of envy, but out of a quiet longing to feel less like a spectator and more like a participant. You close the app, but the feeling stays. That soft sense of being just slightly out of step with the rest of the world. There are nights when loneliness feels like a room within a room, a smaller, colder space you slip into without meaning to, a space where time stretches and every minute feels like it's asking a question you don't know how to answer. You try to distract yourself, but the silence keeps returning, patient and unhurried. And yet, in that silence, something else stirs, something you can't quite put into words. A faint presence beneath the ache, like a second heartbeat, a sense that the loneliness you fear might not be a void at all, but a doorway, a threshold you've never dared to approach because you assumed it led only to more emptiness. But what if this feeling isn't what you think it is? What if this heaviness isn't proof of something wrong with you, but the beginning of something you've never learned to see? You sit there in the dim light, listening to the quiet, and though the ache remains, its edges feel different, less sharp, more mysterious, as if it's waiting for you to look closer. And maybe, without realizing it, you already are. There's a strange tension that lives inside you, isn't there? A pull in two directions at once. One part of you aches for connection, for someone to look at you and really see you, and yet another part hesitates, holds back, closes the door just a little, not because you don't want to be known, but because the thought of being truly visible feels almost dangerous. You want to reach out, but you also want to hide. You want to be held, but you also brace for the possibility of being dropped. It's exhausting. This quiet contradiction. You walk into a room hoping someone will notice you, and then immediately fear what might happen if they do. So you shrink yourself just enough to stay safe, just enough to avoid rejection, but also just enough to feel invisible. And invisibility carries its own kind of sting. Subtle, persistent, almost familiar by now. Think about the times you've stood in a group, surrounded by laughter and easy conversation, and felt like a ghost hovering at the edges. You nod, you smile, you play along, you perform connection, even when you feel none of it touching you. It's strange how the body learns these gestures automatically, as if it's been trained to keep up appearances even when the heart is miles away. And later, when you're alone again, that performance weighs on you. You replay the moments, what you said, what you didn't say, the way someone glanced past you as if your presence barely registered. You tell yourself it shouldn't matter, but somehow it does. It always has. So you retreat just a little more each time, and yet the retreat never solves the longing. It merely postpones it, thickens it, deepens the ache. Because even when you pull back from the world, you can't pull back from the desire to belong. It remains like a small flame you keep cupped in your hands, unsure whether you're protecting it or trying to smother it. Late at night, you scroll again, not searching for anything in particular, just trying to feel less alone. You watch people posting pictures with friends, with lovers, with families. You see groups smiling under warm lighting, arms around each other, as if loneliness is a foreign language they never had to learn. And without asking for permission, your mind whispers the same old question. Why not me? But you don't say it out loud. You barely let yourself feel it. Because somewhere along the way, the world taught you that loneliness is a kind of failure, that people who have friends are doing something right, and people who don't must be doing something wrong. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's everywhere, woven into movies, conversations, social media, even the way we talk about happiness. We glorify belonging. We treat solitude like something to be cured. So you start to see yourself through that lens. You start to wonder what's wrong with you. Maybe you try harder. You force yourself into social situations. You rehearse conversations in your head. You try to be more likable, more interesting, more whatever you imagine people want. But connection doesn't arrive on command. And when your efforts don't magically erase the loneliness, the disappointment hits harder. It feels personal. It feels like proof of your worst fears that something inside you is fundamentally missing. And then the loop begins. A thought surfaces, I don't have friends. That thought becomes a feeling. A heaviness that settles in the stomach. A dull ache behind the ribs. The feeling influences your behavior. You withdraw a little and speak less. Hesitate morre. Others pick up on the hesitation, the guardedness, the quiet fear. They respond with distance, uncertainty, or polite discomfort. You sense that distance and interpret it as confirmation. See, I knew it. And the cycle deepens. It's not a conscious process. It happens quietly, almost mechanically, repeating itself until it becomes the lens through which you see everything. Until loneliness feels like the only truth you can trust. And yet, beneath all of this, there's another question emerging. A question you've never quite given yourself permission to ask. Is the suffering really coming from the absence of friends, or from the belief that you are a separate self who must earn connection, perform belonging, and chase validation in order to be complete? You rarely pause long enough to examine that belief. Most people don't. They're too busy running from the discomfort, too occupied with rearranging the external world in hopes of soothing an internal wound. But the wound remains not because you're broken, but because the strategy was flawed from the beginning. You've been taught to look outward for connection, to pursue it, to chase it, to treat it like something other people grant you if you behave correctly, as if belonging is a prize, as if loneliness is a punishment. But what if that premise isn't true? What if the suffering isn't coming from where you think it is? What if the ache is pointing somewhere deeper? Not toward fixing your life, but toward questioning the very way you understand yourself. You feel the tension in your chest again. But this time there's something else mixed in. Not hope exactly, but a shift, a subtle curiosity. And maybe that's where everything begins to change. Sometimes the shift begins in the smallest, quietest way, not with a revelation, not with an epiphany, just with the way light falls across a wall at a certain hour. You catch it without meaning to. A soft glow, a slow moving shadow. And for a moment, without effort, your mind stops reaching for something to fix. It simply notices, or maybe it's the feeling of your breath settling after a long exhale. That subtle drop inside the body, like a stone sinking gently into water. A stillness that doesn't ask anything of you. A presence that doesn't need to be earned. These small moments, they're not dramatic, but they are honest. They reveal something you've overlooked, that there is a part of you that is always here, always aware, always connected, even in the loneliest hours. Because think about your breath. You don't command it. You don't negotiate with it. You don't make it happen. It moves through you as naturally as tides move through the ocean. And that's the first clue. What you call you is not a sealed container. You're permeated by life. Breath passing through, air from trees miles away filling your lungs, the heartbeat set in motion by forces you never controlled. Your body knows how to live without your permission. It participates in everything, whether you recognize it or not. So what if the you who feels alone is not the whole of you at all? What if that ache is centered in a smaller identity, a tight, contracted sense of self that believes it's cut off, separate, floating through the world, like a solitary island? Look closer. Is a tree, an island above ground. It appears to stand alone. But beneath the soil, roots intertwine with roots, sharing water, whispering chemical messages, supporting each other in ways we barely understand. A forest is not a group of individuals. It is one living field expressing itself in many forms. And so are you. You are like one tree in 1,000, appearing separate only from a certain angle. Look deeper, and you'll see that your roots run through everything. This is not abstraction. This is not philosophy for its own sake. This is intimacy. The kind that has nothing to do with people and everything to do with being. Notice how loneliness disappears in moments of awe. When music stops your thoughts mid-sentence. When you look up at the night sky and feel that familiar soft widening in your chest. When sunlight hits a surface in just the right way. When the ocean's rhythm syncs with your own breathing. In those moments, you don't feel separate. You don't feel lacking. You don't feel like something is wrong with you. Why? Because absorption dissolves the boundaries of the small self. The you who feels lonely is built of thoughts, expectations, and ghostly comparisons. But the deeper you, the one who hears the rain, feels the breath, notices beauty without trying, that self is not separate. It has never been separate, alone yet never separate. This is the paradox that loosens the tightness around your heart. Loneliness isn't proof that you're disconnected. It's the friction between the story you've been told about who you are and the truth you've sensed underneath it your whole life. The tension between the small self you defend and the larger self that keeps trying to break through. And maybe this explains why certain moments feel like home. Not because of where you are, but because of what drops away. The self-judgment, the social comparison, the belief that you must earn your place in the world. When those fall silent, even for a breath, you return to the natural state you've forgotten, the state of being part of everything. Look again at the simple things. Your breath, your heartbeat, the quiet room around you, the light shifting on the wall, none of them are separate events. They are movements within a single field of existence, just like waves in the ocean, not identical, but inseparable. And you are one of those waves. A shape the universe is taking at this particular moment, when loneliness rises, it isn't the truth of your being. It's the small self tightening, contracting, believing it must survive on its own. But the deeper self, the one that notices the tightening, the one that watches thoughts come and go without being carried away, that self is spacious, open, already connected, like the sky holding every kind of weather without being harmed by any of it. You've felt this before, haven't you? Moments when you forgot yourself and, in forgetting, became more yourself than ever. Moments when the world felt closer, not farther away. Moments when the boundary between in here and out there blurred just enough to feel peaceful. Those moments weren't accidents. They were glimpses. Glimpses of what happens when the small self relaxes, even for a heartbeat, and the deeper self is allowed to breathe. So the question isn't, how do I stop feeling lonely? The question is, who is the one who feels lonely, and who is the one who notices it? Sit with that gently, not as a puzzle, not as a task, but as a doorway, because something is opening now. A widening, a softening, a subtle clearing of the fog, and if you follow it, even a little, it will lead you somewhere your loneliness cannot reach, somewhere spacious, somewhere familiar, somewhere that's been waiting for you all along. There's a quiet that comes after a realization, not the heavy quiet of loneliness, but a softer one, a quiet that feels like an exhale you didn't realize you'd been holding. It's subtle at first, like the gentle widening that happens in the chest when something finally clicks into place. You feel the space around you shift, not because the room has changed, but because you have something inside you loosens, something unwinds. You sit with this new stillness, letting it settle, and for the first time, solitude doesn't feel like a verdict. It feels like a presence. Notice how different that is. The silence that once echoed now simply rests. The air no longer feels too large. It feels spacious, almost welcoming, like a field that was always open, but you rushed past without seeing. This is the beginning of understanding solitude as fullness, not lack. Think of a tree standing alone in a clearing. It doesn't question its position. It doesn't compare itself to the forest beyond. Its roots sink deep into the soil, drawing life from a network it cannot see but constantly participates in. Its stillness isn't emptiness. It is completeness, a quiet expression of being entirely itself. In this moment, you are that tree, not separate, not abandoned, not cut off, just standing in your own groundedness, supported by everything that has ever carried you without your noticing. Or imagine dawn light entering a room. It doesn't arrive all at once. It begins as a whisper, a pale glow on the edge of a curtain, a faint brushing of warmth against the wall, and slowly, without forcing anything, the entire room shifts from shadow to presence. Your awareness is doing the same. What once felt dim, empty, or heavy begins to fill itself with a quiet luminosity, not a blaze, not a breakthrough, just a soft illumination that reveals what was always here beneath the noise. Connection is like that dawn light. It doesn't need to be chased. It doesn't need to be earned. It arises naturally when the frantic effort falls away, because the truth is, connection isn't something you go out and grab. It's something that emerges when you're no longer trying to patch a hole inside yourself. Authentic connection flows from wholeness, not from need, not from desperation, not from the fear of being alone. It's the calm tide returning to shore. Effortless, natural, inevitable. And here is the gentle paradox at the heart of it all. You are alone, yet held by everything. You are a single expression, yet inseparable from the field that gives rise to all expression. You stand as one, yet you arise from many. This is not a belief, it's something you can feel now. In the quiet, a kind of deep inner exhale, a recognition that nothing in you is actually missing. You may still spend evenings alone. You may still go through days with few conversations. But the meaning of those moments has changed. They no longer feel like evidence against you. They no longer feel like shadows proving your inadequacy. Instead, solitude becomes a place where you meet yourself. Fully, gently, without judgment. A place where your own presence is enough. And when you move from that place, something shifts in the way you relate to the world. You no longer approach others as someone searching for completion. You approach them as someone who is already whole, already grounded, already connected in the ways that matter most. People can feel that they may not know why, but they can, and without effort, without strategy, without performance, connection begins to take shape, not as something you chase, but as something that naturally forms around you. You don't have to hurry it. You don't have to force it. Life knows how to bring the right people to your door when you stop closing the door on yourself. So sit for a moment in this spaciousness. Feel how the room no longer presses in. Feel how the breath moves easily. Feel how the loneliness that once felt so sharp has softened into something almost tender. This is not the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a gentler one. One where you no longer measure your worth by who walks beside you. One where solitude is not a punishment but a sanctuary. One where connection comes not from fear but from fullness. And as you rest in this awareness, let one final truth settle quietly in your chest. You were never truly separate. Not then, not now, not ever. And something in you already knew that